Type O Negative were never mainstream darlings, they never chased radio trends, and they certainly never sounded like anyone else. Type O Negative built a catalog that was dark, romantic, sarcastic, punishing, and strangely beautiful, often all in the same song. Across 7 studio albums, they blended doom metal, gothic atmosphere, thrash aggression, Beatle-esque melody, and Brooklyn-bred cynicism into something completely unmistakable. Today we're ranking every Type O Negative studio album from worst to best. Here's how we put this list together. We used a structured scoring framework that evaluates each album across 6 weighted categories. Songwriting quality at 30%, which looks at composition depth, hook strength, lyrical complexity, and emotional weight. Cohesion and album flow at 15%, examining whether the record feels like a complete and intentional experience. Innovation and evolution at 15%, measuring how much the album pushed their sound forward or introduced something new. Cultural and fan impact at 15%, covering chart performance, legacy tracks, and influence within gothic and doom metal. Production and sonic identity at 15%, assessing mixed quality, atmosphere, and tonal consistency. And finally, consistency at 10%, which tracks the ratio of strong tracks to filler. Each album was scored independently. No comparisons were made until every score was locked in. The idea was to eliminate emotional anchoring and let the numbers tell the story. The result is a ranking that might not match every fan's personal list, but holds up to scrutiny. Before we jump in, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us keep making these deep dives into the music that actually mattered. Let's get into it. Number 7, Slow, Deep, and Hard. Released in 1991 is the debut, the sound of a band that did not care whether you were comfortable or not. This record was Peter Steele's Exorcism, a brutal, slow-motion collision of doom metal, hardcore, and something that had not quite been named yet. Songs like Unsuccessfully Coping with the Natural Beauty of Infidelity stretched past 10 minutes and dared the listener to keep up. The subject matter was dark, personal, and unfiltered in ways that even the most extreme metal of the era rarely matched. What hurts Slow, Deep, and Hard in this ranking is its unevenness. The album's cultural impact was still limited at the time of release, while the innovation score was among the band's highest because nothing quite sounded like this in 1991. The production has a roughness that never fully serves the songs. The songwriting shows flashes of what Steele was capable of, but the execution is inconsistent. This is the work of a band that had the vision before they had the tools to fully realize it. It scored a 6.45 on our framework, lowest on the list, but that's not a condemnation, it's context. Origin stories are rarely the masterwork, they're the first draft of something that becomes essential. Number 6, The Origin of the Feces, released in 1992, was presented as a live album, but it was not. It was recorded in the studio and engineered to sound live, complete with a fake hostile crowd jeering, chanting, and shouting during the performances. The cover art is deliberately obscene. The title is a play on Charles Darwin, and the whole project is soaked in sardonic humor that most doom metal bands had no interest in. That conceptual audacity is what elevates it above the debut. Steele and company were signaling that they were not going to take themselves so seriously that they forgot how absurd everything was. The tracks include reworked versions of material from the debut, alongside covers that reveal the band's actual influences, which were far more eclectic than their surface sound suggested. On the scoring framework, it lands at 6.85. The songwriting is on par with the debut, but the cohesion and innovation scores edge slightly higher because the concept itself is creative. It is still a transitional record, a bridge between the band they were and the band they were about to become. Number 5, Life is Killing Me, released in 2003. By 2003, Type O Negative had been through the ringer. Internal tensions, health issues, lineup pressures, and the long shadow of their own reputation followed them into the recording studio. What came out was Life is Killing Me, a record that embraces all of that weight rather than running from it. This album has some of the band's most sardonic songwriting. I Don't Want to Be Me is a masterpiece of self-deprecating depression, delivered with complete earnestness. Anesthesia is gorgeous and devastating. The production here is polished, significantly cleaner than anything that came before it, and Steele's vocals are given room to dominate in exactly the way they deserve. What holds it back is a sense that the band was cycling through familiar territory rather than expanding it. The innovation score takes a dip here. Life is Killing Me is confident, well executed, and emotionally resonant, but it is not reaching for anything new. It's type O negative at full competence, which is genuinely excellent. It just isn't quite type O negative at full ambition. The score of 7.3 reflects a strong late-era album from a band that had already defined their lane. Every track delivers. The album just does not surprise you. Number 4, World Coming Down, 1999. If there is a type O negative album that arrives like a punch to the chest and never lets go, it is this one. Peter Steele spent the record processing mortality, addiction, loss, and existential dread in real time. The deaths of people close to him, his own health struggles, and a confrontation with his own darkness all poured into a record that is genuinely difficult to sit with. That means it is doing exactly what it was meant to do. Everyone I Love is Dead is not a metaphor. White Slavery is a meditation on addiction that pulls no punches. All Hallows Eve runs past 8 minutes and earns every second. The production here is immense, deep, cavernous, with a low-end presence that feels physical. The Cohesion score is among the band's highest because this record is utterly relentless in its themes and mood. There is nowhere to hide, and the album does not try to give you anywhere. The score of 8.45 places is just barely behind the top 3. World Coming Down is arguably the most emotionally pure record type O negative ever made. It is not their most accessible, and it is not the one most casual listeners will point to, but for those willing to go there with it, it is profound. Number 3, Dead Again, 2007. Dead Again was their final album, released just 3 years before Peter Steele's death in 2010, and it is extraordinary. A closing chapter that nobody knew was a closing chapter, which makes returning to it now feel both triumphant and gutting. This was the first type O negative album to feature live drums throughout, and the difference is immediate. The performances have an organic weight, a groove, and breathe that programmed drums simply cannot replicate. Combined with some of the sharpest songwriting of Steele's career, politically sharp, lyrically dense, and structurally ambitious, Dead Again feels like a band hitting a second wind. The record also marks a deliberate return to thrash energy alongside the doom, a blending of two halves of Steele's musical identity that he had largely kept separate. And perhaps most remarkably, it is the only type O negative album with essentially no filler, no joke tracks, no interludes that break the momentum. Every song has a reason to be there. These factors were enough to trigger a reevaluation in the scoring process. After factoring in the live drums, the structural integrity, and the return to thrash energy, Dead Again landed at 8.48, just edging out World Coming Down. It is a testament to how much the production choices and consistency of track listing actually matter when you run the numbers. This album deserved better than the attention it got at the time of its release. Number 2, Bloody Kisses was where everything changed. Bloody Kisses, released in 1993, is the album that broke type O negative out of the underground and into something larger. It was the first record on Roadrunner Records to go platinum, marking the label's biggest breakthrough at the time. The album's MTV exposure, particularly the video for Black Number 1, helped pioneer a new space where gothic atmosphere could exist in mainstream metal culture. The genius of Bloody Kisses is how it holds contradiction without flinching. Christian Woman is explicitly erotic and genuinely devotional at the same time. Black Number 1 is a 6.5-minute doom metal song that is also unmistakably a pop song. One of the most immediate hook-laden things Steele ever wrote, buried under enough irony and distortion that it took people a while to realize how infectious it was. The title track runs nearly 10 minutes of drifting atmosphere that should not work as well as it does. Type O Negative emerged alongside bands like Paradise Lost and My Dying Bride as part of the gothic doom metal revolution. But where those bands stayed largely in the underground, Bloody Kisses proved the sound could reach beyond the metal faithful. The cultural impact score here is the highest on the framework, a perfect 10 weighted to 1.5. That is not an accident. Bloody Kisses did not just sell, it defined. It showed that heavy music could be sensual, that doom could be dark and funny and romantic, that the aesthetics of goth rock and the weight of metal were not just compatible but complementary. Peter Steele's bass voice became one of the most recognizable instruments in metal after this record. It scores an 8.75 overall. Breakthrough albums carry a kind of irreplaceable energy. The moment a band discovers what they are truly capable of, Bloody Kisses has that energy in full. It is the album that made Type O Negative matter beyond the underground. Number 1. October Rust, released in 1996, scores a 9.6 on our framework. It is perfect or near perfect across every category, and regardless of the numbers, it is hard to argue against as the band's masterpiece. October Rust is a deliberate inversion of everything dark and heavy about Type O Negative's earlier work. Where Bloody Kisses built drama from contrast, October Rust commits fully to warmth. It is a gothic love album, unabashedly romantic, lush, and unhurried. The guitars sit lower in the mix, the keyboards are fuller, and Peter Steele's voice has never been more present or more emotionally open. Songs like Love You to Death, My Girlfriend's Girlfriend, and In Praise of Bacchus are not reaching for transgression. They are simply beautiful. The album is full of ambient moments and ethereal sound effects that perfectly craft an autumnal atmosphere. It is constructed to feel like a single sustained experience, every track flowing into the next, every tonal choice reinforcing the same emotional palette. The cohesion score is a perfect 10, not because it never varies, but because every variation serves a purpose. The interlude tracks and textural moments that might feel like filler on another record feel necessary here. The production is the band's finest, full stop. Josh Silver's keyboard arrangements are rich and cinematic without overwhelming the space Peter Steele's vocals need. The bass is warm and cavernous. The mix has a depth and warmth that rewards listening on good speakers in a dark room, which is presumably exactly where you should be listening to it. The innovation score is 9. There had been gothic metal before October Rust, but nothing quite this committed to beauty as the primary mode of heaviness. The band essentially created a new thing, doom metal as romance, darkness as shelter rather than threat. The impact score is 9. This is the album that most people outside the Type O Negative faithful discover first, and it is the record that converts them into devotees. Its influence on gothic metal, doom, and the broader aesthetics of melancholic rock runs directly through this record. A 9.6, atmospheric perfection, their most complete artistic statement. If you have never listened to October Rust from beginning to end in one sitting, you have missed one of rock music's most immersive and rewarding experiences. What makes Type O Negative's catalog remarkable isn't just the individual albums, it's how clearly you can trace a line from the raw, jagged fury of Slow, Deep, and Hard to the lush, aching beauty of October Rust, and how each step of that progression made complete sense. Peter Steele, who famously worked for the New York City Parks Department by day before Type O Negative's success, and his bandmates never made the same record twice. They evolved with genuine intention from their Red Hook Brooklyn origins. The tragedy of Peter Steele's death in 2010 at just 48 years old is not just the loss of one of rock's most singular voices. Dead Again made it sound like the band still had places to go. The closing chapter turned out to be better than it had any right to be, and that makes the silence that followed all the more profound. There you have it. October Rust is at the top. Bloody Kisses is just behind it. Dead Again is a genuine surprise in the top half. Do you agree? Is World Coming Down underrated? Should Life Is Killing Me be ranked higher? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more than you know. Thanks for watching.